This is Limitless for the iPhone 17. This is our most protective range of cases. We've been making this case for nearly 10 years now. It's the case that you see in all of our stunts, and we have just been trying to make it better and better every year, and we truly believe this is our best Limitless case ever. Okay, I want to start on this case with the most controversial part, which is the camera control button. This is a new feature that Apple brought out for the iPhone 16, the camera control button. It really disrupted the industry last year, and it was really hard to deal with. So for those of you that were following it, you'll know that we originally brought out a cutout. Now that's a design that we stand by. It followed Apple's guidelines and it gave you unhindered access to the button so that you could fully use it. Whereas other competitors that didn't follow Apple's guidelines actually blocked your access to the button. So that's why we made it in that way. But we got a lot of feedback saying that people wanted a button. So we worked tirelessly. The engineers were non-stop trying to make a button as fast as they could. And 3 months after the iPhone launched, we had already launched a button. But this year, we have taken it a whole step further. We knew we could make that button better, and the amount of work that has gone into the camera control button for this Limitless case is insane, and we are so proud of where we've got to. So our built-in camera control button is so sophisticated this year, it's patent pending. We put 2 engineers on it full time, but I've got our CEO, James, to explain it in all its detail.
But let's put this part of the video at the end because we have a lot to unpack.
Sounds sensible. Let's get back to the run through. So the next biggest change for us with Limitless for the iPhone 17 is all around the camera bump. So as you'll notice, this isn't a real iPhone, but it does give you an idea of what it looks like. And it's much bigger than last year. And this has caused a real design headache for us as to how to protect your camera in the best possible way, whilst also keeping the case as slim and sleek as it has done in previous years. And the easiest way to show you is by separating our case and showing you this PC backplate that existed in our previous cases, but we've redesigned it fully for the new iPhone 17. We've built in a camera bump to this PC backplate and also extended it into the top of the case. And what this gives is real rigidity around the camera bump that fully covers the camera so that it doesn't hit the floor, and much more rigidity to the top of the case. So if you see here, what we are really aiming for is as little movement here as possible. And the reason for that is it just makes the case far more durable and far less likely that your phone will fall out. This protects both the front side of your phone as well as the camera bump. And it was a big design change for us, but we think we've got to such a good answer where that rigidity is really there, despite the much larger camera in the iPhone 17. So just to emphasize this point, I've got a competitor case here that is just an indication of what happens if you don't build that in. You can see how much flex there is at the top of that, leaving this case far more open to warping and also making it much less protective because your phone is not as rigidly in there and the camera bump isn't as rigidly protected. So the phone's more likely to fall out, whereas with our cases, because of that new design around the PC coming up and the camera bump built into it, it means there's so little flex there, and we've able to keep our cases incredibly rigid despite that massive camera on the new iPhone 17. So outside of those 2 very big changes, there are a few small tweaks. So a couple of issues that we've seen over the years with Limitless. One is side splitting that we fixed a couple of years ago, and how we did that was through a really intricate design method where into the PC backplate we have all of these holes, and the TPU that guards the case flows in and out of these holes, which solidly bonds the case to the backplate. So you no longer have a split line, and it means that side splitting issue is incredibly unlikely to happen with any of our cases now. With side splitting as well, that's definitely not only a case for Limitless, that's a massive problem across cases in the industry. So we're incredibly proud of the solution we've come up with that's very technical and very hard to do, but it does mean that your case is almost impossible to split apart because of the way it's solidly bonded together. And then the second issue we've seen with Limitless cases is warping near the buttons. And we've made some big changes to try and fix that this year. So we've made the volume buttons much thinner, and then we've also separated them and created much more stiffness around the sides so that those warping issues are much less likely to happen with our new Limitless case for the iPhone 17. So then outside of that, we have all the great features of Limitless. So the microfiber back to protect glass bags and ensure that you don't get dust or debris scratching that and less likely to crack. We have AiroShock lining the corners. Those corners also have corner bumps on them for extra protection. We have the lanyard holes, which means you can attach a lanyard or a wrist strap or anything that you might want to. Then we have these grip ribs on the side that are ergonomically designed so that the case is much less likely to slip out of your hand, and it almost pushes the case perfectly onto your hand so that it sits really nicely. And as I was explaining earlier, we have those raised edges around the camera bump that's built in, and it's PC now for extra rigidity, and also meaning that your camera doesn't touch the floor even when it lands like that. We have insert buttons on this again, which gives a really nice haptic feel when you're clicking those buttons. And as you'd expect, our cases are lined with perfectly positioned magnets on the back, which make them fully MagSafe and Qi2 compliant so that you can use them with a range of magnetic and MagSafe accessories. And as well as having raised edges to protect the camera bump, we also have raised edges that are really nicely designed onto the front of the case so that when the phone touches the surface, the screen doesn't hit the floor, which is very good for protection, but also scratching as it's lying on the table. And then in terms of variation, this is our most varied Limitless lineup ever. We have the back plates that you've come to expect. So Aramid Fibre, black leather, walnut, silver pearl, bamboo. We now have a range of really nice colors, which means you get all the benefits of Limitless, but with more variety. So we have marine, sage, stone, mulberry, and chili to complete the most varied Limitless lineup we've ever released. The last thing I wanted to touch on Limitless is how tricky it was to make the Air variants because the phone is so thin. Again, this is a dummy phone, but it just gives you an idea of how thin that phone is. So making all the benefits of Limitless with protection, rigidity, the new camera control button was really challenging, but we managed to do it, which means that everything that I've described on Limitless using the Pro examples exists for the Air, and you get that incredible camera control feature built in with all the rigidity perfectly matching the camera control button on the Air too. Because of the amount of work we put into the camera control button this year, I've got our CEO James to explain exactly how it works. You ready to explain, James?
Let's go. So the button needs to register your finger resting. It needs to register a light touch, a full press, or a swipe. So imagine you're taking a photo in a timely moment, you've got the pressure of taking a photo, and if it doesn't work perfectly, it's just going to be really annoying and you're not going to use the button as intended.
And that's because of the different features of the buttons in, like you double tap to change setting, you swipe to zoom and filter between what you want to do, and then you have to do the full press to actually take a photo.
Exactly. And what's really tough for protective cases is they're made out of materials that absorb energy. Now you don't want any energy being absorbed from your finger through to the button.
Yeah.
And equally, you don't want the energy being absorbed of the feedback, because you need feedback, which is the haptic engine in the phone. It gives you like a buzz if you've done a tap or a double tap, or you need to feel the difference from a click. It's a two-way thing. And that's why we put 2 engineers working on this button. We had individuals' jobs that were working on the button.
Full time, just
more work, I'd say, went into this button than many products that we've made. And actually we had multiple suppliers refuse to work with us because of how intricate we've made it. And that is necessary to make such a sensitive button on a protective phone case. And this is patent pending. Right, so how does it work? Well, as we've spent all our budget on engineering the button, I will actually show you with a cutout. This is what your finger presses against. So this represents toughened glass. And this is tougher in real world than sapphire. And so that's what your finger presses against. So the PCB board registers where your finger is touching. So let's attach the PCB board to the toughened glass. So you've got the toughened glass that your finger touches against, and underneath you've got a PCB board. So that goes like that. And that attaches to a silicon diaphragm that moves in and out, that's almost paper thin. And because this is now so intricate, that silicon diaphragm attaches to an aluminium frame that goes around the buttons. And for that aluminium frame, we're going to use your hands. So very intricate. It needs to also be durable whilst being intricate, holding this silicon diaphragm. And to explain this, we're going to pretend that Piers's forehead is a camera control button. You've got the aluminium frame here, and his arms represent the case frame, okay? Now, what is important is the silicone diaphragm is designed so it's preloaded onto the button. So what that means is when the case is on, it's slightly pressing against the button. And that means that if I kind of do a slight tap or I like run my finger along, you can feel that, right?
I can feel that. Yeah.
So one of many problems that could happen is if the button isn't preloaded, i.e. there's a gap, and you actually need to kind of press in and so that kind of absorbs the energy and also means that if you tap it, nothing necessarily happens, or you swipe it and it doesn't register. So it has to be preloaded on. Now sometimes the cases can be too much preloaded on, so it's too much pressure. So he's already got pressure on his forehead. So if I then go and run my finger across it now, can you feel it?
No.
Because it's already got loads of pressure on.
I can't feel that.
The silicone diaphragm is thin and made out of silicone because it allows energy to be sensitive between, going from your finger to the button, and that allows the button to work out the difference between a light touch and a hard touch, and for you to work out whether you're getting a buzz from the haptic engine or feeling a full click. So all of this is very intricate, but the problem that protective phone cases have, so these are the arms, is that material is often made out of soft material, but that means that this can go like in and out. So even if you make all of this aluminium structure, the hands, the silicone diaphragm, everything's very intricate. If it's attached to like TPU and TPE, which is like quite hard to get like fine tolerances and is soft and moves, like especially over time, we found that a button can warp. So this is the polycarbonate underneath the impact material, which is TPU and AiroShock, and we've actually created a shroud that goes round the button, and that means that it's really stiff and precise. So that is the arms. That stops it from being either like not preloaded or too much preloaded.
So it stays preloaded.
Yeah, in the exact same place all the time over the whole age of the case. If you take a competitor case where the case is protective, it's made out of here TPU, that is soft, and that basically like moves around, which means even if you've got the aluminium frame and the silicone diaphragm, things are going to go wrong. It's going to be too preloaded on and it's not going to be sensitive at all, he's not going to feel it, and then it might warp over time, the button falls out, absolute nightmare. That is then when it's over molded, so it's triple injected over the top of that. That was so intricately done, and we had to have like lots of injection molding techniques to be able to make something so intricate. Absolute nightmare. So look how much like that one moves, and that doesn't move when I'm literally like bending the case with my finger, and that's just. And that is important for protection as well. You can see where that's bending. It's bending at the button, and you need a case to be rigid to stop the foam popping out and for torsion and twisting. So this is our case without the button in, this is a competitor case without the button in. See how soft that is, and then just see how tough ours is. And that's really important as well for protection, because look, when I bend the case, it bends where there's a big hole in the case. And so that extra stiffness also adds to the protection.
So to summarize, so that I understand what you're saying correctly, the glass that sits on top of the PCB, where the silicone diaphragm allows it to move to register the correct touch on the Apple camera control button, needs to be perfectly preloaded so that the haptic feedback from the button is perfect against what you're touching. If it's too loaded, it's hard to feel it or feel exactly where it is. Or if it's here, then it doesn't register. And what that means is this basically needs to be kept rigidly in the perfect position every single time. And the aluminium frame that surrounds it only does so much, because if these TPU sides allow the button to move, what you're going to get is not that perfect placement that allows the correct touch. And because we've built this PC housing into it, you can see it on the final case there, you get very, very little movement and real rigidity where the camera control button sits, so that it perfectly connects with Apple's feature. Whereas if you're a competitor like this, that has made it far less rigid and it moves about a lot,
Yeah.
what you'll find is the camera control button moving in the same way, and at points a lot, but you won't be able to get the right sensory touch
Yes.
because it sits somewhere else.
Exactly.
So when you come to take a photo or swipe along and use the features, you can't bloody use it.
Exactly.
Whereas with ours, it should feel as close as possible to using Apple's naked feature.
Exactly.
What an engineering
And our
feat.
customers understand that, and that's why people who buy Mous products are smarter than everyone else.